Welcome to the CISM Exam Prep Clinic presented by the University of Fairfax. My name is David Tafano, and I work in the admissions office at the University of Fairfax. University of Fairfax is the only 100% online graduate institution focusing solely on cybersecurity in the nation. We offer graduate certificates, master's, and doctoral programs in the field of cybersecurity and information assurance. At this time, I would like to introduce our presenter, Professor Dustin Loeffler, JD. Professor Loeffler is a cybersecurity program manager with Boeing in St. Louis after completing stints in Washington, D.C. and Dallas, Texas. Prior to this position, Dustin served as the Information Systems Security Manager for Boeing St. Louis. Before joining Boeing, Dustin worked as an IBM contractor to Boeing, McDonnell Douglas. During his time at IBM, Dustin provided desk-side support, performed duties as a server administrator, and was also an ethical hacker. Dustin currently holds a BS degree in Information Systems Computer Science from Maryville University, a master's in Systems Engineering from Missouri S&T, and a Juris Doctorate from St. Louis University School of Law. Additionally, Dustin is completing his Doctorate of Philosophy at the University of Missouri. Please join me in welcoming Professor Dustin Loeffler.
Great, thanks so much for the intro, David. Appreciate that, and welcome everyone to the CISM Prep webinar. So we'll be covering 4 CISM domains today. We'll also include some practical test taking tips, and then some additional test taking tips as far as how to eliminate certain answers and expedite your review and increase your score on the CISM exam. So I think it's important to share with you a little bit about what my journey has been on the CISM and why I think it's such an important certification. So, David provided you a little background on me, and in addition to both the academic side, on the certificate side, I've got about, I'd say roughly around 20 certifications to supplement that. So I already had several technical certs, but I was really trying to move from that technician level or that practitioner level into that management position and chief engineer kind of position. So as I do every year, while I do my performance evaluation plan, or my performance development plan, pardon me, I try and look at what gaps that I have in my skill set and then try and put together a measured plan on how I can close those gaps and move forward, and really what you need to do, and what I learned early on is you don't prepare for the position you have, you prepare for the position you want. And for me, the CISM helped close that gap for a position that I wanted. So I knew that I wanted more big picture management level exposure, and in addition to that, I knew that I wanted to satisfy the DoD 8570 framework. So I know there's probably on the line, there's probably a lot of government workers, and you're familiar with the 8570 guidelines that which dictate what certifications count, which ones don't count. I'm happy to say that the CISM does count within that framework. In addition to that, I always look for certifications that have a lot of what I call street credibility, not just domestically, but internationally as well. So this ultimately led me to the conclusion that I was interested in the CISM that met all of my requirements, and that it was a great certification to fuse with my other technical certifications to prep me in my journey towards upward mobility. So a little bit about ISACA. So ISACA is the governing body that provides the CISM certification. They've been around for a while, and really got founded right when information systems was kind of a quote unquote up and coming field. It's a huge network of members, 180 countries, 110,000 members, strong social network. There's in particular the job posting areas of the ISACA website really do provide numerous opportunities to CISM certification holders as well. There's chapters in nearly every city domestically, and most of the large cities internationally as well. So it really provides for this great social networking opportunity. In addition to that, I always look to make sure that certifications have some sort of, what's that accreditation that stands behind it. And ANSI is one of the predominant accreditors out there, and they've actually awarded under ISO, so it's a standard, an international standard certification as well. So regarding the 8570, I alluded to it previously before, but it's really a directive from the government saying that anyone working in, let's just call it Department of Defense functions, whether it be whether you're full or part-time military or maybe a contractor, if you have privileged access to any DoD system, you have to have certification. So it's really maintaining a kind of a base level of knowledge. So you're trying to make sure that those people that are touching this network have a minimum competency, and the Department of Defense has decided to do that through industry level certifications. So when you go to apply for a position or whatever position you're in, there's different categories. I am level 1, 2, and 3, and typically the position that you're applying to is categorized as a level 1, 2, or 3, or requires a level 1, 2, or 3 certification. Well, I'm happy to say that the CISM, 1 being the lowest, 3 being the highest, that CISM covers both level 2 and level 3, which is most positions out there. So it definitely opens a lot of doors for you as you're moving into those management level positions within DoD. So this is the intent here as far as the certification goes, and it's really important to know what kind of the end of the means of, as you're trying to plan what position you're going for, or maybe again what position you have and you have to take the CISM exam as part of that, is to know the audience of the cert. So this is really a management focused certification. There are technical concepts, but it's also about a lot of management functionality and management oversight, which I'll talk a little bit later. So, but all in all, it's really managers, directors, officers, and consultants who are kind of acting in these capacities. So the great thing that I love about the CISM, it does enable lateral movement within your organization. So I've seen many people move from like the IT department into internal audit, for example. So it is definitely an enabler within an organization. So the CISM is designed for those security managers. It's one of the few certifications out there that do that. In addition to that, the exam goes through annual reviews and validation by peer security managers to make sure that it is up on the times and is still applicable within multiple industries. So we're seeing tons of growth with the CISM. We're up to over 16,000. I think it's nearing more 18,000 now. The exam's offered in nearly any testing center. So there's a lot of companies who maintain official testing centers. A listing of those is available on ISACA's website whenever you sign up for the actual exam. And it is offered in multiple languages as well. So you actually choose what language you want to take the exam in. So to become a CISM, you not only have to have a passing score, but you need to provide evidence that you have 5 years of general information security work experience. So there's some substitutes for that. Like if you have a bachelor's degree, for instance, I believe that still knocks down 1 year off the work experience requirement. But as you go through that application process, it actually leads you through that. In addition to that, you have to agree to the Code of Ethics and comply with the continuing ed policy. So there's actually, just like, there's multiple certifications out there, but this cert, there's that continuing ed, whether you're doing conferences or teaching classes, or, how are you staying current in the industry, which changes so much. Again, DoD approves of this certification. It's worked within job codes. Most DoD and governmental entities allow reimbursement for the certification, specifically because it does support 8570. As far as job titles go, it's always interesting for me to see what job titles are being filled by those people with a certification. So again, this is mostly for security managers, and it's not surprising that we see a lot of IT directors, managers, and consultants really taking a large chunk of that market, in addition to just general security professionals. So those I would expect to be kind of the two largest areas. It's nice to see that at the executive level, though. So think CISO, Chief Information Officer, or Chief Information Security Officer, for them to have such a heavy presence as well. Also, it's become a very popular certification to supplement. A lot of people supplement it with their CISA, which is another ISACA certification, or the Certified Information Systems Auditor certification, which again can supplement with the CISM, CISA, since both are offered by ISACA. So we do see a lot of IT audit people pick this up as well. So a little bit about the exam. It's really defined into 4 different general domains, and I'll talk about those kind of in specifics over the next couple slides. Oh, pardon me. The first domain is really the governance piece. So it's the kind of general architecture and risk management pieces. Domain 2 is specific risk management. So we talk a lot about risk and what we do with risk, whether we accept risk, transfer risk, things of that nature. So domain 1 is more at I would call it the CIO level, that governance process. How you run your organizations from a policy procedure standpoint. Domain 2 is risk. Again, how you deal with risk on a day in, day out basis and what you do with that risk. Domain 3 is how do you run your information security program? So how do you measure success? What metrics you put in place? And then finally, domain 4 is incident management. So what do you do as incidents kind of pop up? How do you manage those incidents? What if it's, do you categorize that incident into a tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3 incident? How do you manage and put resources into it? So that's generally what the CISM is about. You can see it's heavily focused on management through all 4 domains. So with the areas of governance in domain 1, management, and management within domains 2, 3, and 4. It's not about the bits and bytes of how to do technical things. It's about the overall conceptual management of these security functions. About the exam, it's still on Scantron. So you come to a testing center on the days where you take the exam, you sit down, you fill out a Scantron. It's the old bubble sheet. You have your number 2 pencil. It's 200 questions over 4 hours. I don't think time is really an issue, although there are some people who've worked right up to the end of the 4-hour period. But I would say for the most part, you're going to be done in about 2 to 3 hours. So usually people do reserve the final hour if they'd like to go back and check some answers that they've already put down. So the questions are designed to really test that practical knowledge. So, but the one key here is you really need to spend time in studying on how ISACA wants you to answer the question. The one area where I've seen students kind of make mistakes or test takers, I guess I should say, make mistakes in sitting for this exam is that they try and answer the question based on how their employer would handle it versus how ISACA would. So that would be one big tip that I would give to you guys, is to make sure that you answer it on how the general ISACA guidance is, and those are provided in a lot of the study materials that you'll use to prep for this certification. In addition to that, all questions are multiple choice, so it's usually letters A through D. Two of the answers you can eliminate almost immediately. There is a best answer that you have to fill out here. So it's really you rationalizing between two different answers. So you can, again, almost right off the bat, you can eliminate two, and then based on the question, it's just really trying to rationalize what is the best answer. So again, there's at least 250 test sites out there. They're absolutely everywhere. And one thing I would do before taking the exam is start becoming engaged with your ISACA chapter at wherever you live, to try and gain maybe some real-time feedback from people who have sat for the certification and who are involved heavily with ISACA to get some advice and counsel from them. I will say that probably the most confusing thing about the certification is the scoring rubric that ISACA uses for the cert. 450 is passing, but they use a 200 to 800 point scale. It's not based on any arithmetic or average or anything like that. And it's mostly in part because of they actually throw out questions. There are some test questions within the exam. So you don't know which ones are test questions because they're trying out new questions. And there's some questions that they throw out that may have been a bad question. So they use this to adjust the scale. But 450 is the score you're trying to get, and the exams are offered in June, September, and December. So you still have time to sign up for the December cert. If not, I would start after the first of the year. I would start getting involved with your ISACA chapter and prep for that June certification. You can see the cost information there. There is a cost benefit to becoming an ISACA member. That will allow you to go to the meetings as well. Again, I highly recommend that because the price of that you save on obtaining the certification almost pays for its a free ISACA membership for the year. So I would also do the early bird registration. If you're going to try and sign up for the December exam now, you're going to be at the final registration area, and you're going to pay a lot more for the certification. Also, if you are currently a student, you can get a student membership to ISACA as well, and still sit for those certifications and save quite a bit of money. So the one area about taking the exam over those 4 different domains that we talked about earlier is knowing what percentage of the questions are going to be asked for those different domains, and then being able to allocate your time and study time. So as we look at this analysis, you can see the exam is broken down into really task statements and knowledge statements. So as you study for the CISM, you'll see that task statements are kind of goal-based or objective-based, while knowledge statements really test whether you know. It's more or less the traditional kind of test-taking methodology about whether you know the material or not. So for the most part, under knowledge statements, that's where the bulk of the questions are, I'll say. But you can see, domain 2, for instance, is the most heavily tested exam, so you can expect the most questions within that domain. It's not really an adaptive test to where if you start missing a lot of questions in domain 1, that you'll get asked more questions on domain 1. There's a certain percentage of questions that you'll be asked from each one of these areas. And just to elaborate on governance a little bit more, I know I talked about it a little bit, but it's really looking at whether, I'll say the bulk of the questions I would say would be looking at the strategic alignment. And by that I mean how information security supports organizational goals. So how do you plug into organizational mission? How do you plug into organizational strategy? And how do you drive the business forward through information security principles? In addition to that, the other, I would say, heavily tested area is going to be that resource management area. So given a finite amount of resources, how do you manage those resources, and how do you make those opportunity cost or cost benefit decisions to kind of go forward? In addition to that, governance is heavily about metrics. It's about being able to show kind of that return on investment that information security is within an organization. Also, it looks very heavily at external assessments and audits, and it's not just by your external I don't know, financial audit provider who's also doing your information security audit, like a Big Four, for example, Big Four like KPMG, Pricewaterhouse, and so on. But it also looks at how well the roles and responsibilities are laid out organizationally within the information security team, and to ensure that there's no duplication of effort within the information security team where it's not intended. As far as risk management and compliance goes, this is, I would spend the most time here. As I alluded to when I covered this, in a summary, it's what you do with risk. So it's really understanding the threats to an organization, what vulnerabilities exist, and being able to mitigate those. And how do you, when we know that we'll never be able to mitigate all risk in a given situation, but we do the best that we can, and then how do we accept that risk or manage that what we call residual risk that's left over. And we know that we can't put an infinite amount of money towards this problem, and we need to manage our resources very, very intelligently, because again, we can't overspend. We know that there's, again, a finite amount of money, so we have to prioritize which risk we're going to go after. In addition to that, under kind of managing that information security program, these questions do look a lot like the domain level 1 questions. I will say the area of change management is exceptionally emphasized in that, because I think that's really the greatest risk to an organization. This whole configuration management or change management process typically is one of the areas that introduces risk or vulnerabilities into the equation. So that's why this area is so popular and heavily tested. In addition to that, we have the same metrics and risk management discussions. It just kind of builds on what we've already talked about. And then finally, the incident detection process. How do we know that we have an incident going on? How do we manage that incident? How do we try and contain it and reduce the damage that's really being done? And then after we've successfully completed an incident management process, how do we try and get our business back up and going again? There's critical functions that can't be down, like payroll, right? If we can't pay people, people are not going to work for us. In addition to that, when do we bring in some forensics kind of function and try and determine what the root cause was of a given organization? So post breach or post incident. So for me, I think at this point, it's, unless you've been studying already, I'd probably couldn't recommend trying to take the December certification. But what I would do is try and I would get involved with your ISACA chapter. The ISACA chapters typically have a boot camp as well, that you can put together a self-study plan on top of your the boot camp experience, and try and start with the domains where you can have the most successes, and then try and build into areas that you're not as familiar with. I would focus on trying to get roughly 70% of the questions right. There's some really good web practice exams on websites like CCC Cure out there. Also, there's a great website called Cybrary, which has some videos to help you through this as well. So given this time period and a study plan that you put in place to supplement maybe a boot camp activity that you look at, you'll definitely be on the right track. This is, again, it is time constrained, but very few people run against that time constraint. As I mentioned, you'll be able to eliminate those 2 out of 4 answers right off the bat. But there are key words that ISACA uses in this exam, like most, least, best, primary, that really help guide you to that right answer. So just pay special mind to that. Whenever I take exams and see words like this, I tend to circle them or underline them just to make sure they're emphasized. At the end of the day, the CISM is definitely a marathon. It's not a race. So just take your time. You know, a lot of people do kind of micro study plans, do a little bit every night instead of, you know, sitting in the library for 8 or 10 hours trying to do some kind of bulk preparation. And that tends to work better, trying to, you know, break this off into bite-sized chunks. If you have any questions, I know you can tweet to this and then I can answer those, or feel free to reach out to me via email. Appreciate your time. Thanks so much.